Hey everyone, I'm Dr. David A. Palmer, and welcome to Rewire the Response. This podcast is for the adults in the room. The ones navigating explosive behaviors, big emotions, and sometimes their own unraveling. And maybe that's you. Maybe you cried behind the wheel after school drop-off. Maybe you've second-guessed every decision you made this morning. Or maybe you're a teacher who's been told you just need to be a little more consistent, and you're trying, but still doesn't seem to work. If that's you, I want to say this clearly. You're not failing, you're rewiring. And this podcast, this community is here to walk with you. And so today I want to share with you why I started this podcast, where the fire came from, and what you can expect from me and this space moving forward. Let's begin with something raw. Let me tell you what really pisses me off. It pisses me off that we're still treating behavior like something to be controlled or managed instead of something to be understood. It pisses me off that we still focus on quote unquote fixing kids, especially those who are neurodivergent or trauma impacted, without asking what their behavior is trying to communicate. Listen, I've sat in meetings where a child's distress was reduced to a checklist, point system, a color-coded chart. Actually, just last week. When a brilliant 7-year-old with sensory processing differences started having meltdowns and transition times, I've heard the school's response wasn't to investigate the sensory environment or her nervous system needs. It was to create a sticker chart that completely missed what was actually happening for her. And here's what I know from experience as not only an educator, but also a parent. No child has ever felt safe because they stayed on green. They feel safe when the adult in the room sees the storm behind their behavior and stays and connects. Neuroscience is clear on this. When a child's dysregulated, their thinking brain, that prefrontal cortex that handles reasoning, logic, impulse control, emotional regulation, what we often call executive functioning, it goes offline. And in that moment, no sticker chart, no rewards, no trinkets, treats are going to reach them. What they need most is really simple. They need co-regulation, not more consequences. I'll tell you what else pisses me off. That we expect adults, parents, teachers, and others, to hold this complexity with a smile and a chart. That we hand teachers and parents these behavior management plans and call it support when the real problem isn't behavior, it's a lack of tools, training, and nervous system literacy. I remember working with a teacher not so long ago who was literally breaking under the pressure of managing a classroom where 4 students had significant trauma histories. And the solution was a more rigorous implementation of the tiered behavior system. But what this teacher needed wasn't another framework. He needed an understanding of how trauma rewires the developing brain, and he needed practical in-the-moment tools for when a child's survival response kicked in. It also pisses me off that adults, especially those who are trying hard and really doing their best, are made to feel like they're the problem, they're the failure. And I've worked with some incredible teachers and deeply loving parents who are breaking under the pressure of trying to do everything the right way and still feeling like they're getting it all wrong. So let me say this clearly. You are not weak for struggling. You are not broken. You are not the problem. You've simply inherited systems that weren't designed for connection, but were rather built for control. And honestly, and we see this more today than ever, those systems are failing all of us. Now you know what pisses me off, but here's what breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to see parents crying and reaching out and trying to get solutions, but feeling alone, feeling ashamed of how they reacted that morning, or feeling like they are being shamed by others around them. I could tell you many, many stories, but I can remember this one mom who we talked to after she had just yelled at her 9-year-old during a morning meltdown because the socks didn't feel just right. And she was devastated by her response, believing she damaged her relationship with her son. And what she didn't understand was that her own nervous system was responding to his distress, which is a completely typical, understandable physiological reaction that we can learn to recognize and regulate. And it breaks my heart to watch teachers who are overworked and got into this work because they love teaching and they love the kids start to resent their classrooms because every day feels like a battle. Breaks my heart that most adults were never taught how to regulate their own nervous systems, only how to comply, to perform, to suppress. Let me tell you, that was my story. And what I'm sharing with you in this podcast isn't something I've always known or practiced. It's actually something quite recent. As I began to reflect and do more research on all of this, I noticed that about 60% of adults struggle with emotional regulation in moments of stress. And it's not because there's quote unquote something wrong with them, but because emotional regulation is not natural. It's a skill that must be learned. And most of us were taught to either bottle our emotions rather than process them, or we just let them out and we're punished because of it. And so now these same adults are trying to support kids through emotional storms without ever having been shown how to anchor themselves. We have adults who are doing everything they can, and they're exhausted, and they're feeling like they are failing. Because, listen, we need support. We need a roadmap. We need a roadmap for what to do when love isn't enough to hold it all together. Do we need love? Yes, we do. That's the foundation. And love encaptures this understanding, this desire to understand, this innate empathy and compassion we have. But we also need tools. We need to know what actually works, what's been supported, and we need that support. And most of us, honestly, have never gotten that. So what are we going to do? We're going to either blame ourselves or we're going to turn around and blame the kids. So I created this Rewire the Response framework system, which this podcast is named after, because I want to offer something different. I want to offer something better. I want to say, what if your child's behavior is not because they're trying to be defiant, disobedient, or even disrupt your life? And neither is your reaction to their behavior, because what if we just never learn a better way? What if we could now? And then there was a moment, one as a teacher observing another classroom when a student who was overwhelmed, misunderstood, deeply dysregulated, picked up a chair and threw it. I've had similar things happen in my own classroom. The air changes, the class freezes, everyone is terrified, the adults are terrified, not of the child, but many times not knowing what to do next. And I've seen students with complex trauma histories that few people in the school fully understood. And what happened is there was a trigger, an unannounced fire drill, and that triggered a cascade of stress responses in the student's body that eventually erupted into that big moment. I've also seen that student just run out of the classroom screaming, thinking their life was in danger. But it wasn't defiance. It wasn't acting out. It was their nervous system saying, right now, I don't feel safe. And that's when it hit me. The way we respond to distress is the intervention, not the punishment, not the incentives, the caring, compassionate, connected response. And when that happens, let me tell you, things start to change. When we are actually offering our own nervous systems as a co-regulating force, our calm can literally help rewire a child's nervous system in distress. It's the look in our eyes, how our eyes look, how steadiness of our breath, our body positioning. It's all about what we model in the moment when everything else feels like it's unraveling. And I realized this, we're just not prepared for this as adults. And it's led me to understand my calling, my purpose, which is to equip adults with the tools that they actually need and want. We're talking about nervous systems, trauma, masking that happens every day, sensory overload, attachment rupture, and how it's showing up in kids who are just trying to survive the day. And seeing all this and coming to this understanding has become the catalyst for what I do. And that's why I started this podcast and started writing a blog. And honestly, I've been through at least 2 or 3 rebrandings. And finally, I came to find the clarity and simplicity of why I'm here, why this podcast exists, why I do what I do every day. It's because we need something better. We need a connection-centered, neurodivergent affirming, trauma-informed way to connect with our children and our students. We need spaces where you can show up imperfectly and they know they still belong. So every week, I'm going to keep this simple. I'm going to give you one idea worth reflecting on, a few practical things to try, and one action step, something you can do that very day. So we're going to talk about things coming up like the science of co-regulation and why it works so well, how to recognize and respond to sensory overwhelm before it becomes big emotions and a meltdown, what to do in the moment when a child is completely dysregulated, how to repair after your own response wasn't what you hoped it would be. And I'd love to start incorporating some guests along the way. And so if you're interested, I'd love to have a conversation with you. All of it is going to center on the brain-body connection. It's going to honor the needs of neurodivergent children and students. It's going to call us back to what matters the most, and that is relationship over reaction. So for whatever reason you've decided to listen for these few minutes, let me tell you, you're in the right place. You're not too late. You're already doing the work just by showing up. And I want to thank you, honestly, truly, for being here with me. And I know that seeking out resources like this means that you care deeply. You've probably spent already hours upon hours researching and listening and watching. And what it shows is that you're committed to showing up differently. You're showing a commitment that matters more than any perfect intervention that you could try. So how do we keep going on this together? Well, on my website at drdavidapalmer.com/free guide, you can download the free Rewire the Response guide. And you're going to find lots of good things that are myth busters and how you can actually respond by understanding and having empathy and compassion for your kids. Please subscribe to this podcast. Every week, I'm going to try to drop a new episode. You're not going to want to miss it. They're going to be bite-sized. They're going to be relatable. They're going to be practical, and they're going to be designed to fit into the margins of your already overbusy life. And if you know someone who's in the thick of it, a parent, a teacher, a caregiver, feel free to share these episodes with them, because I know someone needs to hear you're not failing, you're rewiring. And if you want to support this work, again, go to drdavidapalmer.com. I invite you to subscribe to the newsletter. Everything there is available for you. I know all of this helps keep me showing up and building the tools that support real connection, real transformation. And so in our next episode, we're going to be diving into another topic, which is meltdown, shutdowns, and scattered states, what's really going on, because I want us to understand the basic neuroscience behind these intense moments and give you ways in which you can support and connect in them. So until then, lead with calm, listen deeply, and live on purpose. And look forward to next time.